Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're going to do a top 10. The topic of the top 10, go away heat. Now if you're not familiar with that term, the difference between go away heat and regular heat that a heel would get in wrestling is, go away heat is when you literally want to change the channel when a wrestler or wrestling personality is on. Best example is during the Monday Night War, when someone would have go away heat on either Raw or Nitro, you would switch over to the other show because you did not care about what they were doing. And it's, you can qualify for this list. This is my personal list. You could qualify for this list a number of ways. Either you're a bad wrestler, a bad personality, someone that was pushed when they didn't deserve it, or, as you can see with at least one person on the list, my opinion changed after stuff that they did in their personal life that now I have go away heat with them because I don't care to ever see them ever do anything. But with all that being said, let's jump right in. Number 10, Eva Marie. Eva Marie came along at a time when we were having the women's revolution and women's wrestling was supposedly getting its break and getting its chance to be on equal footing, or at least getting representation. And she got all kinds of opportunities. She got chance after chance to learn and better herself and become a solid wrestler. Other women like Trish Stratus famously had a similar path to her, but Trish Stratus put the dedication in and became a mega star and probably one of the most important and popular women's wrestlers of all time, whereas Eva Marie never seemed to care much more than just the fame aspect of wrestling. For that reason, and for the reason that at the same time she was being employed, they would fire other more interesting and compelling women, I have to put Eva Marie on this list. And I get it. I get why she was hired in the first place. She's a beautiful woman. She seems to have some sort of athletic talent. If you could mold that and make that into something, then you got yourself a star. Unfortunately, years and multiple stints in the WWE never made anything out of her. Now, coming from that, our number 9, probably one of the more controversial ones I could see on here. I could see people disagreeing with this. But for me, the number 9 is The Miz. And don't get me wrong. There are some things about Miz that I like. I think he's a fantastic talker. I just don't buy him as a wrestler. I can't buy... His face alone makes me think of somebody that every single other wrestler on the roster would beat up. He's not tremendously gifted in the ring. He's just barely above your basic wrestler ring-wise. His talking is above average. I would have preferred, and I think it would have been more palatable, for Miz to be a manager. If this was the era of like the 1980s where you had managers like Captain Lou and Bobby Heenan and Jimmy Hart and Freddie Blassie, The Miz would have fit perfectly in that role. I think he would have been a great mouthpiece for other more talented and more physically imposing wrestlers. But to me, he's never been a guy that I cared about, and he's never been a guy that said anything to me like that I want to watch his act. So for that reason, he makes my list. Now our number 8 is probably one of the prime examples of nepotism that you're going to see on this list, and that's Garrett Bischoff. Now, Garrett Bischoff, I don't know how interested he was in becoming a wrestler, but he never seemed to click. It never seemed to click. And we do see this every now and again with a second-generation wrestler. Eric Watts was similar. Garrett Bischoff. From what I've seen, George Goulas, and that's an old name. And that's actually before my time, but I've seen him on video. There have been some second generation wrestlers that feel like they need to get into wrestling. Ted DiBiase Jr. is another one, but never quite put it together. Don't have the passion needed to be a wrestler. They figure because of their name, they get on the card. But with that, there's also a certain expectation. For every Randy Orton, there's a Garrett Bischoff. For every Cody Rhodes, for every Dustin Rhodes, there's a Garrett Bischoff. And to me, at the time in TNA, that he was in the company and the spot he was given, I didn't care about him ever. I mean, he was part of Aces and Eights, which is much maligned. I personally think more positively than most people do on the gimmick. But even that, he was a low-level member. I just never really gave any craps about Garrett Bischoff. That being said, we're going to go to our number 7. And you're going to see this with a couple people on this list, so before I get into this, I'm going to talk about that. Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss. Now, there have been other roles that I've liked Baron Corbin in. When he was down on his luck last year, I thought that was rather good. I thought he did well. Lone Wolf Baron Corbin had some really good moments. I've seen a lot of improvement from the first time seeing Baron Corbin way back in NXT, and I've seen him improve along the way. However, and you're going to see this a couple more times on this list, sometimes it's not the talent, it's the gimmick they're given. And this, with him and Madcap Moss, it just doesn't work for me. I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, or it's supposed to be meta, or that it's supposed to be dad jokes, which everybody loves a good dad joke. But it's just bad, and it's just bad comedy, and it's just more proof of WWE not ever knowing how to do comedy quite right. Every now and again, they get something super funny, but more often than not, you get Madcap Moss and Baron Corbin. Which, I don't know, to me, out of all of the current wrestlers or current wrestling personalities, they're the most go-away heat, in my opinion. Now, next up, number 6. A man that got chances in both WCW and WWE, Giant Gonzalez, a.k.a. El Gigante. From all the interviews I've seen and from all of what I've heard people talk about it, Giant Gonzalez was an extremely nice man. I want to say Downtown Bruno, Harvey Whippleman, Jim Cornette, some others have all said really nice things about him as a person. As a wrestler, not so much. As a wrestler, he made the Great Khali look like Frank Gotch. He was just not a good wrestler. He never could get it. He was very uncoordinated. For a guy that came from a basketball background, he seemed to have very limited athletic ability. I mean, he was basically supposed to be your next generation Andre the Giant, and that's what they were hoping for, and that's what the companies kept hiring him for. But there was nothing Andre-like other than his height about him. He was just boring and just terrible. I mean, I don't know why he had 2 chances in 2 big profile roles other than the intangibles, the height, the size. But other than that, he had nothing else going for him. So that's why he makes this list. Now our number 5. Another example of nepotism, Nia Jax. And there was a time I thought Nia Jax could become something, and I thought she could be put in a really decent role, kind of a Awesome Kong kind of role, or even a Beth Phoenix type role, or Chyna type role, where she was basically the bully of the women's division. But she just continued to be reckless in the ring. There were a lot of women that got injuries from her, most famously Becky Lynch. And there was so much bad, and she never really seemed to improve much. And the only reason I could think that she kept a roster spot for so long was her family ties to The Rock. Other than that, I think she should have been fired a long, long time ago. And I hate to say that. I hate to wish people fired. I don't wish anybody to lose their job or lose their employment. But other than being a meme machine, Nia Jax was never a good wrestler and never deserved any of the spots that she was given, in my opinion. And that's why she makes a list. Now, our number 4 is going to be a combination of 4 different gimmicks, all around the same time, all with a very similar theme. And that's going to be PN News, Men on a Mission, Van Hammer, and Man Mountain Rock. If you notice, they all have a musical gimmick. PN News and Men on a Mission, a rapper gimmick. Van Hammer and Man Mountain Rock, a rock star gimmick. And the thing of it was, even at that time, their gimmicks were supremely dated. PN News and Men on a Mission, almost said Eminem, Men on a Mission were rapping a lot like Rappin' Duke and the Sugar Hill Gang and Curtis Blow, when we were already in the era of the Wu-Tang Clan and Biggie Smalls and Nas, and Snoop Dogg was starting to come on. And, we had, the style of rap had changed and became something different. And these guys, even when they debuted, were already doing a dated version of rap music, which moves extremely fastly. The styles change extremely fast. On a similar token, Van Hammer and Man Mountain Rock, coming in the beginning of the grunge period, are looking like 80s hair metal guys trying to play hair metal music. And again, another thing where they were a decade behind what was actually popular. And I don't want to disparage all these guys. I've liked some of the wrestlers. Hammer I liked when he became a Flock member. Mabel I thought was awesome as Viscera. I thought the Viscera gimmick was a lot better. PN News I thought had some decent stuff when he went to ECW and kind of dropped the gimmick altogether. Man Mountain Rock is Max Payne. I enjoyed Max Payne a lot better than Man Mountain Rock. But for the gimmicks, all 4 of them had go-away heat, and for me, it was all 4 for the same reason. With that being said, and I didn't even realize I put the four gimmicks on number 4. That's kind of funny. Number 3 is a guy that I actually really enjoy as a wrestler, but he has go-away heat now because of what he's done in his personal life. And that is Alberto Del Rio, Alberto El Patron, whatever you want to call him. The guy's just a scumbag in real life. I mean, and all of it's rumor and conjunction, but there's enough smoke there that there's usually fire. When you see that amount of smoke, that amount of talk, usually there's some substance behind it. I just don't care to ever see the guy again. I thought he was an awesome wrestler. I really did. If you go back probably to some of my earlier videos, and I'm reviewing matches that he's in, he's probably one of the highlights of the show for me. I liked his updated take on the JBL / $1 Million Man gimmick. I just can't stand the person, and he's trying now to make a comeback in wrestling, and God, hopefully no one gives him that shot to do so. But, I don't know, just him as a person, his personality ruined the wrestler I actually liked, and that was Alberto Del Rio. And that's why he makes this list. I never care to see him on television again. Now our number 2. Again, this one's probably going to get a little bit of a backlash. A lot of people really love this guy, and if you do, I understand why. And I can see why you love him. He just was never someone I cared about. And that's Goldberg. Goldberg, to me, was extremely limited. His promo skills have never been and never probably will be any good. His wrestling skills weren't that good. He had a great look. He looks like $1,000,000. And he had a great following. Just to me, I thought that Goldberg was, much like I said with the musical gimmicks, Goldberg felt like a gimmick that would have fit back in the 1980s in WWF, not in WCW in the late 90s, and definitely not now that he's in his 50s. He's uninteresting to me. I never cared about Goldberg. The Streak wasn't interesting. I thought there were other people on WCW that I liked a lot more, DDP being one, the Hall and Nash, the NWO, Raven. There was a ton of other wrestlers I found way more interesting than Goldberg. And I get it. I get there were a lot of people that jumped on the Goldberg bandwagon and liked him a lot. And I'm not knocking anyone that did. For me, Bill Goldberg was a guy that I never really cared about. And more often than not, I would switch the channel when his matches were on. Now, before we get into our number one, we do a little thing here on our top 10 list called the best of the rest. Basically, it's people that were considered for the list but didn't quite make it for whatever reason. And first one coming off of that, Big Dick Johnson. And I'll probably get demonetized just for saying that. This guy was the oily guy that wore, like, the overweight oily guy, and I'm an overweight guy. I'm not making fun of him for that. He would come out with baby oil drenched on him, wearing like a very small pair of trunks or bikini bottoms, whatever the hell they were, and kind of do dancing both in TNA and WWE. And backstage, he was a writer for the company. It's, again, just one of those things that WWE thinks is funny. But when I see that, it's one of those things where you don't want someone that's not a wrestling fan to come in and see what you're watching and go, oh, this is wrestling? This is what you like? Because it was that embarrassing of a thing. To me, it was just embarrassing to watch it, in my opinion. And the next one, I actually toyed with leaving this off of the list just because of what happened to him after his run in WCW. And I kind of had to separate that from him because, unfortunately, the man committed suicide shortly after he was fired from WCW. But if I'm being perfectly honest, and this is why he didn't make the list proper, this is why I labeled him in the best of the rest, because I do feel bad about that part. But if I'm going to be perfectly honest, he's probably one of the people that's even higher on this list of guys I've changed the channel while watching, and that's the Renegade. He was billed to be, or hyped up as, basically the Ultimate Warrior coming in, and for whatever reason, they didn't make a deal, they never called the Warrior, whatever shoot interview you believe, Warrior didn't come in for that spot, so they kind of gave the Warrior gimmick to this guy, the Renegade, which, again, I hate to talk bad about the guy, I really do. But he really wasn't a good wrestler. He didn't have the charisma or it factor that the Warrior had. And it just didn't fit. And it didn't work. And it was so bad. And it was one of the things about WCW that was that bad at the time frame that you just shrugged at. And it just was annoying. It was a bait and switch. A lot of the reason he's on there is the way that he was booked, not him himself. But again, I have to put him on here because more often than not, when his match came on, I changed the channel. Now, before we get into our number one, make sure you smash that like button. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. Share the video, comment. Let me know who's some wrestlers that give you go away heat. If you think I'm crazy on someone, if one of these people's your favorite wrestlers, let me know what you think. Let me put it down here in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. And our number one guy, we touched on him momentarily just a minute ago, The Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior came into the WWF at a time in my life where I should have been a monstrous Ultimate Warrior fan. He was the right guy with the right gimmick for someone of my age, which would have been roughly, I want to say I was about 10, 11 when he came into WWE and really started his run. But to me, he was just terrible. I didn't like him. There was other wrestlers. I liked Roddy Piper better. I liked the British Bulldogs better. At that point, I had started seeing Jim Crockett promotions. So there were guys like Dusty Rhodes that I liked a lot better. Big Bubba Rogers, Big Boss Man, I liked a lot better. There was a ton of other wrestlers that to me I found way more entertaining than I ever did Ultimate Warrior. His promos made no sense to me. His wrestling skill was very limited. And again, much like Goldberg, I get where people like him and I get the adoration he's had. However, on the flip side of that, I don't get the continued adoration he has. Because Ultimate Warrior, after his wrestling career wrapped up, and it's documented on Dark Side of the Ring, he was a very controversial person. There was a lot of very bigoted and just bad stuff that he would say. And he'd go on these speaking tours and denounce homosexuality and just a terrible, terrible person. If he thought what he was saying was what he actually thought, he was a very, very terrible human being. And I hate to pass judgment on someone that's dead and can't defend himself. But to me, even if, much like I said with Alberto Del Rio, he was one of my favorites at a time, I could not let that pass after finding out what happened after his wrestling career. Much like Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit, to me, was one of my favorite wrestlers from WCW, from ECW into WCW, and I was extremely happy when he finally won the big championship in WWE. But then he went and did what he did, and I can't ever look at him the same either. But on a much different scale, Ultimate Warrior, even without his discrepancies, would have made this list. With his discrepancies added in, puts him to the top of our list. But with that being said, this is my top 10 of wrestlers with go-away heat for me. Again, let me know what you think. Hit me up down here in the comments. Who has go-away heat to you? If you think I left someone off the list, you think I put someone too high, someone too low, let me know down here. And again, if you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing. I'd really appreciate that. Looking at my analytics, 46% of my views come from non-subscribers. So if you're a non-subscriber and you like this, please subscribe. Hit the like button. Let me know you're a new subscriber. I love to hear from you as well. I like to have this as an open conversation. If we get enough comments, maybe we can revisit this and talk about some of your wrestlers with go-away heat. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.